Okay, so we're at the start of the coronavirus situation, and maybe you've got 2 weeks of self-quarantine. Now, if you've got coronavirus and you're feeling unwell, this video isn't for you. Go to bed, get some sleep. But if you're asymptomatic or you're just playing it safe and you've got 14 days of self-quarantine, yet you still want to be productive, then this video is all about the Academic COVID Challenge. 14 days, 14 tasks, something simple each day to make you a better academic. Let's get into it. Hey, Dr. Ken Dutton Register here, coming to you with another stemventurist video trying to make you a better scientist. And today we're talking about the Academic COVID Challenge. But before I get into that, I just want to quickly iterate on the last video. Now, you may have heard, or I may have mentioned, that the next video was going to be about networking, particularly at a conference. Well, as we'd all be aware, pretty much all scientific conferences are now being shut. So having a video on networking at a conference right now, or probably even the next 6 months, possibly even a year, is probably not the best timing. So we're going to scrap that and move that on to a future date. But today, I thought we could do something a little bit more fun. Obviously, we're seeing a lot of very serious reports about the coronavirus, but let's face it, life has to go on. So why not, if you're in self-quarantine and you're feeling all right and you've got some time on your hands, maybe your lab's shut down, why don't we try something a little bit different and do the Academic COVID Challenge? Now, this is something that I thought could be a little bit fun, something new each day. Most of these tasks are very easy to do, maybe 1 to 2 hours max. But I think by the end of it, if you manage to complete them all, you're going to be way productive and in a better position as a scientist at the end of it. So let's get into it. Update number 1, update your social media accounts. Now, a lot of us have a lot of social media accounts, but when was the last time you went back to see what was written in your biography on each of those different accounts? If you're like me, it's probably been a while. I'm generally pretty good. I normally try and do this every 6 months to a year, but I know there's definitely some people who may not have touched it since they started the account up. So now's a great time to go back and just see what's in those profiles. Is it up to date? And does it reflect who you are right now, or more importantly, where you want to go? So if you're on Twitter, for example, make sure it really describes who you are as a researcher, or if you are trying to reach the public, what type of content that you're going to be talking about. Maybe check those different titles to make sure that they're up to date. If you're graduated your PhD a couple of years ago and you still haven't updated that you're now a postdoc or in a non-academic role, that's the time to update it. And we're talking not just Twitter, but LinkedIn, Facebook if you're using that professionally, maybe your ResearchGate. Maybe it's time to go and check out your Google Scholar profile. Is that up to date? All of these different things will really make sure that if you've got it up to date, will make you look very polished. And if anyone happens to Google you or find you on any of these sites, they'll know exactly who you are and know exactly what skill sets that you have. So update your socials. Number 2, set up a new social media account. So in the similar vein to the previous point, maybe it's time to branch out and try something new. Now, most people probably spend a lot of time maybe on 1 or 2 different social media sites, and that's fine and that's okay. But if you've got a bit of downtime and you're looking to expand out or explore different platforms, now might be the time to test out a new platform. So maybe it's time to set up a TikTok and see what all that's about. Or if you've done pretty much all LinkedIn, but you've never done Twitter, maybe it's time to play it out. These accounts take sometimes usually a couple of minutes to set up, but it's really delving into the platform and starting to build it out and maybe doing a bit of YouTubing on different ways on how to actually use these accounts effectively that might be worthwhile. So this could take you maybe about an hour, and if you spend 5-10 minutes each day for the remaining couple of days of the challenge, then maybe you'll have a new account, a new set of followers, and something that you can use to get your research out to the general community. Now, if you're looking for a new platform, something a little bit different, why don't you check out scientist.net? And that's a scientist with 2 T's. Now, this is a new platform, really super early stage, run by a Durham accelerator, but it's designed to help scientists connect with other scientists, both through networking, but also potentially finding jobs. Now, I've talked to the founders and I really like their mindset and where they're trying to go. But be aware the platform is super early stage. They've literally just entered an accelerator to help build this platform out. But if you want to be part of something new and help guide that platform into something that could be really amazing for the research community, then sign up, provide some feedback. It's a bit of a gamble, but I really like where these guys are heading. So definitely check them out. All right, challenge number 3, and it's sort of in a similar vein to number 1, but check your CV. When was the last time you checked your CV? Hopefully it was in the last couple of weeks, or one of the best strategies is to be updating it every time you do something new. But I know not all of us are perfect, and sometimes we leave that to a task to do down the track, and then usually what happens is a year down the line, you have all these different things that you need to backtrack through emails, figure out what events that you did, fill in all the details, and it becomes a real nightmare. So why not do that now? Go through, update your CV, make sure it's all filled in, so next time you submit a grant or you apply for a award, you can just quickly grab that CV and you know you're good to go. Challenge number 4, career planning and strategy. When was the last time you sat down and thought about where your career was going? Do you want to stay in academia, or do you want to do a non-academic or alternative academic role? If so, how are you going to go there? If you're staying in academia, are you planning on writing certain grants? Do you need a publication schedule? Do you need to be requiring certain skill sets to achieve some of those grants that you would like to submit? All of these things are really important to consider and often take a long time to actually plan and get into production. So it's always worthwhile to step back and actually think about where you are in your career and where you want to go. Because sometimes these connections that you need to make need to be done early to facilitate the time to be able to get some of these grants, for example, successful. So it's always worthwhile just taking 5 minutes to an hour, just sitting there and thinking about where you would like to go and what you need to do. Pro tip, write it down on a piece of paper and make sure you tick off that throughout in the next couple of weeks or at a later stage. All right, challenge number 5, connect with a new colleague. It's likely a lot of researchers right now are in some form of lockdown, and so now's a great time to reach out to them. And we're talking either people that you already know, maybe it's someone that you've done some work with in the past but you haven't chatted to for a year or 2 years. Maybe it's a colleague, a PhD student who does similar work to you, but you haven't really touched base on what their current projects are. It's worthwhile maybe potentially even connecting with another collaborator, maybe someone you want to work with. Or if you're trying to get outside of academia or trying to get some different knowledge into a different field, maybe it's time to do one of those informational interviews, i.e. sitting down and just having a chat about their career paths. Now's a great time to connect with colleagues, probably doing it digitally, but the amount of information and connections that you can make could be really useful. Challenge number 6, update your lab book. So now is a great time to fill in your lab book, make sure it looks nice and tidy and that you've linked out all your different results, pasted it in there so that in a future time, maybe you're going to write a paper that you know where all the data is and you can access that information really quick. Academic COVID challenge number 7, write up those protocols. So you may, possibly like me as well, have a couple of different protocols lying around with altered changes, little tweaks that you haven't consolidated into a final polished version of a method. Now it's worthwhile going back and doing this because if you do have new staff coming on board and they do need to use the same protocols, having all that information compiled into a neat document is really important. So now might be a good time to polish up those methods and make sure it's legible in a way that someone else can do those experiments. Academic challenge number 8, write up a lab manual. Now this is a bit of a newer concept, and I've sort of seen a couple of labs, particularly emerging PIs, do this for their laboratories. So here it's not only compiling a list of different protocols that the labs commonly use, but it includes a bunch of information about the work culture of the lab, as well as some useful information, particularly for researchers that might be coming from an international background. So it might be as simple as to typical areas that postdocs or PhD students live in, to where you should shop, to certain customs, maybe it's some restaurants that people like, all the way to the lab etiquette of, maybe certain rules, like maybe it's a shared lab cleanup duty roster. Outlining all of those different things specific to a lab can be really useful for new members coming on board. And to be honest, it saves you as a mentor or a supervisor to be able to have to explain it to each new staff member coming on. Now there's some great examples, and a lot of these labs have uploaded their lab manuals to use as a draft and use as a bit of a guide to develop your own. So I'm going to put a link up here or down in the show notes so that you can use to build up your lab manual. Point number 9, read those papers. Let's face it, we all have a list of papers that we've been meaning to read and putting it on to-do list, but have never got around to it. So now is the best time to go through, read those really important papers, and take those nuggets of gold information and put that into your future ideas or designs. Get through that paper reading so that you're on top of the literature. And this fits into point number 10, which is update your ideas document. Now, if you haven't got one of these already, I strongly recommend that you start one. So here, the idea is to write down your ideas as you get them to creating a living document that you can draw upon at any time in the future. So whenever you're reading a paper and you notice something that's very intriguing, a result that's intriguing, or a new line of direction that they've recommended in terms of what they found in their research, and you find it interesting, write it in your ideas document. Make sure you include where you found that idea from or reference, if there is one, and make sure to write out maybe a small paragraph exactly why that idea or paper was of interest. Now, when you do this over a long period of time, sometimes a year to 3 years to 5 years, you begin to create a series of ideas that do mesh together quite well. And these can be the foundations for your next grant proposal. So keeping up to date on those ideas can be a really great way and a great resource that will help you out in the future. All right, we're getting there. We're getting close to the end. Academic challenge number 11 is to analyze your data. Again, this one seems pretty obvious, and a lot of people have mentioned this, but analyzing your data, this is the perfect time to do it. Now, interestingly, there's a number of different organizations that have put their analysis tools for free, particularly those in the flow cytometry space. And I'll put a couple of links down in the show notes below of those that I know that are doing free software platforms. But it's probably also worthwhile just doing a bit of a Google. And this is particularly important or useful if you need particular software that's on a computer at work, but the work site is locked down. So having these free licenses for a month or 2 months or however long they make it can be really useful in crunching a lot of data really quick. So hopefully this one you don't have a lot of unanalyzed data lying around, but if you do, now's a great time to do it. All right, challenge number 12, clean your files. I know I'm pretty bad at this, but my filing system for my files on my computer are often pretty much relatively not too bad, but there's a lot of chaos there. Maybe there's a few things on the desktop that shouldn't be there. Maybe you've got a little bit sloppy with naming some of your files and it's a little bit of chaos. Now might be a good time to just go through and just clean everything up. Make sure everything's ordered so that when you're trying to look for those particular files, maybe it's some data, that you know where to find it. All right, almost there. Point number 13, challenge number 13, work on some slide decks. So we all know that we have to do presentations, and often we have a very first few number of slides that we repeat quite regularly. It's those sort of introduction slides. When was the last time you updated them, and how polished are they? Maybe it's worthwhile going back and checking them out and seeing if you can pretty them up a little bit, make them a little bit more polished so that next time you have a talk, you've got these really super mint slides. Now, some of the platforms that may help you out in improving your slide decks, one that I would recommend is BioRender. These guys have been doing some really great stuff and have really expanded their platform, but it's a really easy to use platform to make medical illustrations very easily. And they can also create particular icons or different cells for you if you request them. So definitely check them out. I think you get a month free currently for a new member. Otherwise it is a paid subscription, but the quality of images that you can create, particularly if you're still using PowerPoint, which I still regularly do, BioRender can be a really great way to up your game and create really polished figures. All right, final challenge. You're on the last day. This one's actually going to be a little bit longer and might take you a little bit extra couple of days or weeks, but if you're like me, you may have a paper that's been about 95% complete for way too long. Now's the time to just get that over the line and submitted. It's one of those things, sometimes you just keep putting it off. It's like, yeah, I'll get around to it, I'll get around to it, I'll get around to it. But if you just mentally put it down on your list and just tackle it, you'll be surprised at how quick progress you can make. I started doing this with a paper that I've been meaning to write up for a while, and I've just been putting it off. I sat down in 2 hours, I pretty much fleshed out the whole document. So I would definitely recommend get those papers over the line, get them submitted so that people can see the great work that you're doing. All right, that is it. You've completed the Academic COVID Challenge. Hopefully now, after that 14 days of small activities, bit by bit, you're well more prepared and you've been productive. Now, if you want to see more tips on being productive, you can see this video at the end here or down in the show notes. Or if you're curious about where I'm in, this is inside the world's first cancer biology themed escape room. So this is a bit of a project that I've been working on with a new business called Excite Science. And if you're curious about that and want more information, check this link here. Lastly, I thought since everyone is probably likely in lockdown and working from home, I thought next week we can talk about strategies on how to be productive while working at home. This is something that I do quite often, and I know good things and bad things, and I've also compiled a list of suggestions of how to do this effectively. If you like today's video, make sure to give me a pipette thumbs up. Next week, we're going to be talking about the strategies that you can use to be more productive while working from home. And remember, nothing ventured, nothing gained.